Hello everyone, welcome to my Last of Us Part 2, Survivor difficulty, no damage, no crafting, no upgrades, no safes, no listen mode walkthrough. And this is Seattle Day 1 for Abby's section, and we're finally getting to play as a character that is the most controversial character ever in the Last of Us series, for some of the dumbest reasons ever. I mean, admittedly, the reason why people hate her is because the actor who played as her did her role exactly as intended, and they were able to achieve Naughty Dog's goal of creating a game about hate. Naughty Dog did warn everyone that people would hate the game, but people are taking their criticisms with this game a little too far. Not a little too far, way too far, because the actor who plays as Abby is receiving death threats from the people who played this game. Can you believe it? And then Neil Druckmann is also receiving the exact same thing as well. All because of the fact that Abby killed Joel early on in the game, which helped lay down the foundation for what The Last of Us Part 2 story is about. But unfortunately, people are so stupid, and they're so superficial in their thinking, that they decided to favor action over thinking. And that is why so many people who have given a lot of negative criticism about this game have not taken into account the reason why Joel died early on in the game and the reason why Abby did what she did. I have never seen a game generate this much criticism just because of the fact that Naughty Dog achieved exactly what they wanted with creating a game about hate. I just don't believe it. And you know when I'm saying that 99% of gamers are idiots? It's because of stupid stuff like that. I have seen my fair share of really dumb moments perpetrated by these 99% of individuals, but this really is the candle on the cake for really cementing those people's places on the gaming spectrum and in the whole entire world. And I had a big discussion about this with my friend Bakal, and he was the guy who sent me the article about these death threats. It's just so stupid. I just don't get it. I really don't. And Pickle gave a lot of great analogies to really describe this. Like, these are probably the kind of people that refuse to wear a mask when they go out in public because they think it infringes on their political rights. Or, this is just like if people bought corn from a store and then ended up not liking the corn and then started sending death threats to the people who worked at that store and also towards the farmers who grew that corn. Like, these people are pretty much manifesting Ellie's rage towards Abby, but they're worse than Ellie, because these are people that literally live in the exact same world as us. It's unbelievable. And my friend brought up a really good point to discuss about these people, like, these are the kind of people who cannot separate a product from the people who make it, and that these are the type of people that are impossible to please, and are literally never happy no matter what you do. And I 100% agree with my friend. This is precisely why you shouldn't listen too much to your fans when developing a game. And you wonder why I'm very critical about the Resident Evil community, and why I was so disappointed in New Capcom when they decided to take influences from a fan base that was so incompetent in thinking. There's just so much I want to say in the later videos, and I know for sure I am just going to absolutely rip into all of those people who decided to voice such negative criticisms about the game for such really dumb reasons. I'm sorry that they didn't drag out Joel so that he was just more of a cliched character. I'm sorry that Abby isn't overly sexualized. I'm sorry that the game has transgender characters. I'm sorry that there are homosexual characters. I'm sorry about all that. But you people don't deserve to live in this world if you are going to judge the game based on some stupid criticisms like that. But I'll save all that anger in the later videos. Right now, let's just focus on the gameplay. So, this encounter is pretty difficult. I had to restart this encounter, and when you restart the encounter, I highly recommend you go all the way to the right and go prone, so that the enemies are very slow when it comes to doing their melee attacks, and you will have plenty of time to get rid of them using the semi-automatic rifle, because the semi-automatic rifle is so powerful compared to the pistol, and it's way more accurate. It's one of my favorite weapons on this game, and you might have noticed that near the beginning of this video, I had to use a healing item because I took damage during the moment where you're in the car and the Seraphites are shooting you. Well, that's all mandatory damage, but whatever. At least the game gives you a healing item before that moment, so that's perfectly okay. But seeing as how this is a very slow moment, I'm going to take the time to talk a little bit about Abby and how different she is from Ellie. So, Abby is a lot more capable in combat compared to Ellie. I mean, Ellie does have some pretty good weapons, though, but Abby is more capable in melee combat compared to Ellie. And she is definitely a lot faster with her strike animations compared to Ellie. Like, you do a strike animation on an infected, Abby just immediately gets rid of them because she's so proficient in fighting due to the amount of time she's dedicated to making sure that she is surviving in this world. And, you know, she was a part of the wolves, so of course, wolves have a lot of expectations, which is why she's portrayed as being very muscular on this game to showcase her development into what she is throughout the time of the outbreak, which I really like. And it just makes a lot of sense. I like the logic in that because you're in a dangerous world. Why would you not dedicate your entire life to making sure that you can survive in this world, especially when you're dealing with hostile groups, hostile infected? Like, it just makes so much sense to me. It's the exact same reason why Chris became a lot more muscular in Resident Evil 5, so that he could keep up with Wesker, and to make sure that he was encountering far more dangerous threats compared to the older Resident Evil games. Because in the older Resident Evil games, the enemies were just pushovers. Nothing special about them whatsoever. They were so easy to get past, they were so simplistically designed, and they didn't even feel very lethal whatsoever. But, you know, in Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil Revelations, Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 7, the enemies were far more dangerous. And if Resident Evil 1 Chris were to be in those kind of situations, he would never survive. He'd probably be dead in the very first level. Maybe even before that. That's exactly why Chris had to push himself so much, and it's no different to what Abby's doing right now. Because she's living in a very hostile world. And the fact that that's properly reflected in her ability to do strike animations very quickly on downed enemies, you know, it's really good. But aside from that one advantage, Abby plays very similarly to Ellie. The only other difference between herself and Ellie is that she's not able to craft as many items compared to what Ellie is able to craft, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference, because you can get a lot of the encounters done with the weapons you get, and Abby gets some really good weapons. She gets a double-barreled shotgun, she gets a semi-automatic rifle, she gets a pistol, she gets an even stronger pistol that can one-shot enemies very easily. And then she also gets access to the flamethrower, and she also gains access to a crossbow. And each of these weapons are very advantageous in particular situations. Like with the flamethrower, it doesn't have a lot of utilities on this game, but it's especially powerful against the Rat King. It does a tremendous amount of damage to the Rat King, which honestly surprised me when I killed him so quickly in this walkthrough. And then with the crossbow, because the arrows don't break as frequently as Ellie's bow and arrow does, the arrows can be used a lot, especially in Seattle Day 3, where you're going to be using it a lot in the middle of a couple of encounters between the WLF and the Seraphites. Because if you use the crossbow during those moments, the Seraphites and the WLF will not be able to pinpoint where you are, and they will be focusing on each other the whole entire time. And another good reason is the crossbow doesn't have a lot of parabolic motion compared to Ellie's bow and arrow, and it fires instantly, so it makes it very handy when you're trying to go for headshots so that you can instantly kill them. And the arrows, as I mentioned, they don't break very frequently, so it's a very reliable tool on this game. But I'm gonna have to pause on this particular tangent right now because we're in a stealth encounter, and the beginning of this stealth encounter can be kind of random because the placement of the enemies can be different. You know, I was on the right-hand side of that train car, but sometimes there can be an enemy right in front of you, and they can see you when you're on the right-hand side of the train car, so you're gonna have to go prone if that's the case. But I get very lucky because those two enemies group up together, and I'm able to get to this spot. I'm going to wait for this Seraphite to look under so that I can get past him, and then I'm going to hide over here because there is a Seraphite right in front of you, and you have to make sure you put the tree between yourself and him so that he doesn't spot you too quickly. Now from this point onward, the enemies are always going to be in the exact same positions, and the pattern will always be the same. So for this part of the encounter, there are two enemies. There's one enemy patrolling on the ground, he's right there, and then there is another enemy on the rail car right next to him. You need to wait for these two enemies to go to the left, and you need to wait here. Don't go underneath the train car because the enemies can see you when you're under there. Just stay over here and remain crouched. And you'll see them in a moment. The enemy on the train car is going to be coming to the left at some point, and then the guy on the right, there he is. They're both heading to the left right now, so now's my chance to move. And then you're going to need to turn right over near this train car over here. And then all that's left now is just two enemies. And there's a weird issue I came across in my blind playthrough where for some reason the AI detected Manny. I don't know why, but there are certain situations on this game where the enemies can spot your AI companions, and I don't exactly know what causes them to do this. I don't know if it has something to do with the very first time you get started on this stealth encounter. Certain properties aren't properly adjusted, but it's so rare for this issue to happen. At least it doesn't happen as frequently as that encounter select bug where you get that pop-up message saying that you've completed the encounter when in actuality you haven't. It just triggered in the middle of the encounter or at the beginning of the encounter. In fact, I had a really weird moment happen with that particular bug. I somehow got the pop-up message even though I was in the menu for picking the encounters. So apparently this bug isn't exclusive to just being in the encounters. It actually can happen in the encounter select menu. That really goes to show how big of an issue this problem is, if it's happening in the menus at random points. And I so need to make a video showcasing this bug because it's absolutely hilarious, and I'm amazed that Naughty Dog hasn't patched it yet. But that is the end of that encounter. Just wait for that sniper to go back. She did kind of spot me for a little bit, but I was able to go prone fast enough. And then this part right here isn't part of the main encounter in the encounter select, because all you gotta do is just wait. But waiting here can be a little tricky because there are times when the enemies can come very close to you. They don't come inside the store, but they can flank you. And that's why I'm making sure I'm staying prone, and I'm gonna look in this direction. Mel is kind of serving as a shield right now, and she's gonna move, but I kind of want her out of the way so that it's a little bit easier to shoot these enemies. Because there's gonna be an enemy on the roof, and then there's a chance that one of the enemies on the ground will flank me. And right there, I didn't even get the hit marker, and she somehow died. That is very weird, but the cavalry has arrived, and that is the end of this little tiny sequence, which is why it's not even classed as a main encounter if it lasts for this long. But I'm gonna skip on ahead to the part where we get to the camp. And in the camp, we are going to gain access to some additional ammunition, and we will also gain access to the pipe bombs. And the pipe bombs are pretty good in this game. They can stun enemies upon impact, and they blow up, and they do a lot of damage. You're not going to see me use the pipe bombs until I get to Seattle Day 3, because the other encounters can be done without ever needing the pipe bombs. I originally thought I needed the pipe bombs for the Rat King, but the flamethrower more than sufficed for that. I highly recommend you save the pipe bombs for Day 3, because during the encounters where the Seraphites and the WLF are fighting each other, they can definitely be handy for speeding up the encounters to make sure that the enemies die very quickly. But now we're on this sequence right now, and there's going to be a couple of encounters with Infected and a couple of encounters with Seraphites, and it's pretty simple, this part, because you don't really need any ammunition. Although, the part where you get the double-barreled shotgun and those runners start running after you, you might have to use a couple of rounds from your double-barreled shotgun because you're in an enclosed space and the runners are pretty dangerous on this game. Although I was able to get the encounter done easily by just hiding in a spot and just using a strike animation against one runner and then getting rid of the other one using the melee. So that can be a pretty viable option for that particular room. And you'll definitely want to use it if you're trying to save up on shotgun ammo, even though the game does give you a lot of shotgun ammo. And the shotgun is very useful in emergencies whenever you're getting cornered by the enemies. And it's especially helpful against clickers and shamblers, because clickers die instantly from the shotgun. I'm so glad that they don't try to give the clickers an artificial handicap and just allow them to resist shotgun shells. Just because they're a high-tiered enemy doesn't mean they should be able to resist the shotgun, because the only part of their body that's actually armored is their head. So that's why it makes sense for the shotgun to kill clickers. And when it comes to shamblers, I'm so glad that the shotgun is very useful against shamblers, because you can use that as a way to stop shamblers from gaining a lot of forward momentum with their attacks. Although, you have to be very careful though. Whenever shamblers initiate their attack and you put them into a flinch animation, they immediately detonate. So you have to be very careful when it comes to stunning shamblers. But always make sure you shoot the shamblers with the shotgun before they initiate their attack, and they will always get stunned. So it's, once again, a very useful backup option if any enemies are closing in on you. And I would really like to know if there are any other locations where you can get the shotgun, because this game does favor the option of allowing you to pick up the same weapon from multiple locations if you didn't pick it up from an earlier location. So there might be a better spot where you can get a shotgun and not have to deal with any of the enemies that spawn when you pick up the shotgun. And when it comes to Abby's shotgun in particular, I think her shotgun does a lot more damage than Ellie's shotgun, but because of the fact that it's a double-barreled shotgun, it has a lot of reload time to it. So, because I'm not upgrading, I'm going to have to deal with that increased reload time, and I'm going to have to make sure that the enemies aren't near me when I'm trying to reload. But those encounters with the Infected, the first one, I just ran past everything, and then the second one, with this encounter right here, I just stealth past the clickers. It's very easy. And we're about to gain access to the shotgun in a moment, once we drop down this hole over here. And be very careful of this sneak attack right here. That can catch a lot of people out, but I dodged him, and I have a melee weapon, so I'm going to be able to finish this guy off very quickly. And now that he's dead, I'm going to be able to pick up the shotgun. And the enemies are going to come from the hole that I used to get into this room the moment I go near the door that leads out of here. And before you leave, there are a couple of shotgun shells over here. So make sure you don't forget about them. And then when you reach this threshold of the room over here, the enemies are going to spawn in. I try to let them spot me, but this first runner, it goes the other way, and it doesn't see me. So this allows me to get behind this shelf over here. And the runners are just going to be running around like crazy, because I think they're supposed to be in a mandatory combat encounter with you, but because they haven't seen me yet, they are just going to be running around. So eventually, one of these runners is going to come over to where I am, and I'm going to be able to do a strike animation on it. And the moment I do the strike animation, the other runner is going to attack me. And I'm just going to take it out normally, but I don't demonstrate the proper way to fight runners in this whole entire walkthrough. So the best way to fight runners is to make them flinch, hit them 3 times, dodge, and then hit them 3 times. Because when you dodge, it resets your combo, so you'll be able to initiate the combo again and not deal the final blow that will allow them to just initiate a counterattack. And skipping on ahead, here is a long-range holster. This holster can appear in multiple locations. You can actually get it near the end of a stealth encounter coming up, which I'm about to transition to, which, by the way, you need to start sprinting immediately. If you don't get to this spot that I'm heading to in a moment, a Seraphite will set up in a sniping position, and he will be able to spot you as you're making your way out of this building. And once you get over here, start to go prone, because there's going to be 2 Seraphites that will go into the building that you were just in, and you'll be able to get past them. They will not look your way, and it's very simple. Make sure you get into the shrubbery over here so that the Seraphites are less likely to spot you, and then the moment they move more to the left, crouch, and you'll be able to get past them. This is a very simple encounter. I'm honestly surprised this is in the encounter select with how simple it is. If you're not fast enough to get over to the spot, you'll be forced to craft a silencer, because that's really the best way I can think of to getting past the Seraphite that sets up in a sniping position. And it's really cool that Abby has the ability to create silencers without the use of training manuals, but this is a no crafting guide, so I can't ever be in a position where I need to craft. But once you've gotten to this area here, go ahead and get up this mantle point, and once you're up here, it's pretty much the end of the section. You just gotta go up another flight of stairs, and that's really it. I mean, I do stay around in this area for a little bit because I just wanted to see where the sniper was, but I couldn't find him. I know he's on this floor somewhere, but I don't think he's ever in a position where he's going to spot you as you're making your way over to this staircase over here. So I'm just going to edit out the end of the encounter, and once you've gotten through that crate, there's some shotgun ammo you can pick up. If you didn't pick up the long gun holster, the holster will be before you move the crate, so it's kind of before the prone position. So that's another spot where it can spawn. There's a workbench, there's some ammo over there. And now we're just gonna go over to this encounter right here, which I was able to nail on the first attempt. If you restart the encounter, these enemies will not be in conversation, so you'll have to time it a little bit differently. But essentially what you're trying to do is you need to get over to this building and get over to this spot over here before the enemy that's behind this wall can spot you. Now that I'm past him, this is really simple right here, because all you gotta do is wait for these 2 enemies to go away, and then this guy that has the melee weapon, you need to wait for him to move out of the way, and then move towards the slide area. I don't think he does any turning animations, even though he's in a neutral state. So you're free to just not be so cautious around him. But wait for him to move to the left, and not be looking at you, and then get down the slide. Simple. And now we're going to move on to one of the harder parts of the game to do no damage, and it's the Stalker encounter in the forest. And the reason why it's hard is because the melee on this game is good, but it's not built for handling multiple enemies, and this is the best way to fight the Stalkers, because for some reason, the game disables your ability to go prone during this moment. You're only able to stand up and crouch. You cannot go prone during this moment, so you cannot exploit the fact that the enemies will do the low attack that will allow you to make them flinch every time. And by the way, I'm going to slow down this moment right here, because watch. That right there, when you do finishing blows on enemies, your dodge is delayed, but I just demonstrated a way to make it less delayed, to allow you to just immediately initiate a dodge after you do a finishing blow. And what I demonstrated in that slow motion was I pressed square to start an attack, but because Abby's attacks are a little bit slower compared to Ellie's, she's able to initiate a dodge during the start frames of the melee. See, just then. while I was in the recovery frames for the finishing blow, I pressed square, and Abby was trying to do an attack, but I pressed L1 during the startup frames, and it cancelled my animation, so I was able to do a dodge. That's definitely the best way to handle that if you're trying to get away without taking a blow, if you're stuck in those recovery frames of the finishing blow. But that encounter ends when Abby does the animation of just repeatedly slamming on the stalker's head. I highly recommend that when you're doing that sequence, you need to make sure both the stalkers are in your line of sight so that you always know where they are. And you're not getting any moments where both of the stalkers are attacking you. You need to make sure that Lev is attacking one of them, and that only one of the stalkers is attacking you. If both of the stalkers are attacking you, try to make sure that they're in your line of sight, and try to make it so that the stalker you're fighting is in between yourself and the other stalker, and that will allow you to not take any damage so easily. Now, you just gotta follow Yara, and then you're gonna get access to a couple of bricks and bottles that will allow you to deal with 3 stalkers. It's very simple, and now we have this encounter with the heavy Seraphite. And bear in mind, there is a grab animation that she can do that gives you mandatory damage, but all you gotta do to avoid it is attack her twice. You do not want to overextend on your combo. If you overextend on your combo, there is a high possibility that she will counter you and grab you, and you cannot avoid the grab. It's a mandatory grab that will deal damage to you, and the way to avoid it is to attack her twice. And every time you deal 4 hits of damage to her, she will gain access to 1 additional attack in her combo. So she will go from a 1-hit combo to a 2-hit combo to a 3-hit combo, and it takes 14 hits to kill her, and that is the end of this encounter. Now that she's dead, we're going to be moving around with Yara and Lev, and we're going to be getting access to the hunting pistol, which is a very powerful pistol, and it's incredibly useful against a lot of enemies. Despite this, however, I still recommend that you save a lot of hunting pistol ammo for Seattle Day 3 of Abby's section, because you're going to be fighting humans a lot, and there are going to be sequences where the Seraphites and the WLF are fighting each other, and just to make the sequences go by faster and not put yourself in a lot of danger, the hunting pistol can be a really useful tool. I mean, obviously you want to use the crossbow first before using the hunting pistol, because the crossbow will still allow you to maintain a low profile while the humans are fighting each other. And when you run out of crossbow ammo, the hunting pistol is your next best option for getting rid of the humans very quickly in Seattle Day 3. But we're currently encountering a couple of runners, and it's all pretty simple. Lev's going to help out a little bit, and he's going to do a lot of high damage to the enemies since, of course, the AI on this game does the exact same amount of damage as you do, so they can kill enemies very quickly. And that is a standard that I really feel needs to be in future games, because most of the time, AI in games are just very useless. And considering that this is an AI system that cannot die, I'm amazed that Naughty Dog decided to make them very capable. I mean, when you look at an AI system like Resident Evil 6's AI, the AI on that game cannot die, but they're so passive in doing anything, and that's why they're very useless on that game. They don't attack enemies, they are so delayed when it comes to reviving you, and they're just pretty useless overall, but not in this game. The AI on this game, very useful. And I know people are going to make the argument of, oh, it'd make the game too easy if the AI is able to kill everything so easily. Well, if that's the case, then just make it so that the enemies are a lot more dangerous, they're a lot more aggressive like they are in this game, and just make it so that you're dealing with a lot more enemies. Like, those are some simple things you can do to balance out the fact that the AI in this game can kill other enemies very quickly. There's so many different ways of changing the game's parameters to accommodate for the fact that the AI can kill enemies very efficiently. Of course, the one thing I definitely wouldn't want is the AI having life, because how many games have you played where your friendly AI have life, and they've died so easily from the enemies because they displayed this right amount of incompetence at the most inopportune moment to get screwed? Like, protection missions when it comes to friendly AI are always going to be bad, and very rarely are they ever fun. I mean, like, Sheva from Resident Evil 5. Sheva from Resident Evil 5, a lot of people hate her, but she's one of my favorite AI systems because she is so reliable on that game. She's far more reliable than Resident Evil 6's AI, and unfortunately, people only look at the negatives, and one of my farmer friends decided to look at Sheva like that, and he decided to call me an arrogant fool for believing in Sheva, when he himself uses Sheva in the most improper ways possible. So, screw him, whoever he is. I mean, Serum 17 did the exact same thing with me, where I told him that people just don't really understand how Sheva works, and he called me delusional in believing in her. And then he said that he has played Resident Evil 5 longer than I have, so he understands the game better than I do. But what exactly does he mean by playing longer? Does he mean that he's actually taking the time to study the game, to actually understand everything, and that reflects in his playstyle? No. I think in SHAREfactory's case, his idea of playing Resident Evil 5 longer than me is staring at Sheva's butt the whole entire time, or staring at Chris's biceps the whole entire time, and that somehow counts as playing the game longer. Well, that is the dumbest form of thinking I've ever heard. And it's still something I haven't forgotten to this day. It's been years since SHAREfactory has done that to me, and I still remember it, because it's honestly the most meme-worthy statement I've ever heard from SHAREfactory, and it's just so hilarious that he believes in that. And I'll never stop poking fun at him for making such a statement. And speaking of SHAREfactory's strategy for this entire section is awful. This is the best way to do this section, and it is heavily reliant upon Resident Evil 4 mechanics, which is one of the main reasons why Resident Evil 4 mechanics in a survival horror game make it truly feel like a survival horror game for all of the right reasons. And what I'm doing is I'm sitting in this area right here, I'm leaving the window to my right intact, and I'm letting the enemies come to me. Whenever the enemies come through the shimmy space, I'm going to shoot the runners in the leg and punish them with a strike animation, and when any clickers come by, I'm going to wait for them to finish their animation at a particular point, because if you shoot them too early, they will not get flinched. I'm going to shoot them in the head, and I'm going to punish them with a strike animation. I highly recommend when it comes to the strike animations that you get in front of the enemy, because Abby's strike animations are way faster when she's doing the strike animation from the front. And be very careful when going for the strike animations. There is a possibility that one enemy might be around while you're doing a strike animation, so you'll have to be ready to dodge. And make sure that the window is intact while you're in this spot, because while the window is intact, the enemies will only come from these positions over here. The moment the window breaks, it will serve as a place for the enemies to go to, and they will be able to ambush you. For the last phase of this entire encounter, you'll want to break the window at a particular point, but I do not recommend trying to go for the melee, because as I mentioned before in one of my previous videos, the prioritization system when it comes to meleeing the window is kind of awkward, because there are times when Abby will prioritize a nearby enemy, and this will prevent you from destroying the window with the melee, so you'll want to shoot the window instead. But for the last phase, I definitely recommend using the shotgun, because the enemies are very aggressive on this part. They will close in on you very quickly, and there's not really an opportunity to do a strike animation when multiple enemies are closing in on you. And then right here, I unfortunately do the context-sensitive melee attack, which breaks the window, but it doesn't matter, because at some point I'm going to have to move, and I have the shotgun to support me, so I can still use this position to my advantage. It's just, I wasn't thinking of using the shotgun at the time. And after you kill 4 enemies, I definitely recommend moving from this spot, because after you kill 4 enemies, the shamblers will appear, and there's going to be one shambler that will spawn from this spot over here, and another shambler that will appear right in front of you when you're in this spot right here. And like I mentioned before, the shotgun's really useful against shamblers. I mean, you could choose to use some pipe bombs if you want to, but I definitely recommend saving the pipe bombs for Seattle Day 3, rather than using them here. But here they come right now. There's a shambler over here. I'm going to throw out my brick, and I'm taking a risk here with doing the strike animation, which, by the way, you want to make sure you stun the shambler with the brick before it has a chance to do its attack animation, and then press square at a distance, because the paired animation nature of the strike animations will allow you to teleport over to the shambler and stop him from doing his acid attack. However, I still recommend not going for the strike animations against shamblers, because they have a tendency of starting an attack animation the moment they recover from the animation. So that's why it's best to use a shotgun against them. And after you kill one shambler, Lev and Yara will appear, and that is the end of that encounter, which is one of the hardest parts of the game to do no damage, because there's so many enemies. And we are now going to move on to the next encounters. And warning for this particular part of the game, the forest chapter. I've had crashes in this area. I've had crashes during the Stalker encounter, and I've had crashes during the restaurant holdout. In total, this sums up to about 3 crashes, but I think that's only because I was restarting the encounters a lot. I think when you restart the encounters a little too much, it causes the game to crash. And one of the crashes that I had in the forest area completely bricked my PS4, and I had to unplug the AC cord, which is, of course, very dangerous, because there's always the risk of damage to the system or corruption of data. But even if my data was corrupted, I would have gladly replayed this game. But when it comes to a walkthrough, it's definitely not something you want. And I was highly confident my data was not going to get corrupted, so whatever. But another reason why I had to unplug the AC power cord was because I tried to close the application while the game was frozen, and it delayed getting the error report up. So I tried to press my PlayStation button to see if it would do something, and it completely froze my screen. So that unfortunately led to me having to unplug the AC power cord, which of course Sony recommends not doing while the PlayStation is on because it completely damages the system and corrupts data. But it was a risk I had to take. I had to do the exact same thing for Black Ops 4 when it crashed while I was playing the last Zombies map for that game, which was very unfortunate, but hopefully I won't be encountering any other issues like that anytime soon. But that encounter, just run past everything. It's very easy to get past all those enemies because there aren't so many blocking your way out of there. And then once we get inside the ship, we're going to gain access to the crossbow. And now we have to escape the ship. So the path I found for this encounter is always going to work. And I'm not going to waste time trying to kill most of the enemies because they're very easy to get past. So get past that runner there. There's a clicker beyond this wall over here. Be very careful when mantling. You will make a bit of noise and it will kind of alert the clicker, so you're going to have to move fast. Once you're beyond this wall over here, I still recommend you go slowly because the enemies do have a tendency of hearing you through certain pieces of geometry. And I think this wall is one of them. But now that I'm past him, I'm just going to get rid of this runner over here. And then this final part right here, there are going to be 2 clickers. One of them is inside the room to your left. There's another one just standing still, and you're going to have to move very slowly. Even while prone, you still have to stand still just to make sure that he doesn't hear you too quickly. And then there's a runner right in front of you. I'm going to use one of my crossbow bolts in order to get rid of the runner, and that will free the way in getting out of here. I'll at least get a return on my investment, because when you get through the door, you get a crossbow bolt back. You'll get a lot more crossbow bolts back when you're in Seattle Day 3, because the game really loads you up with crossbow bolts, just to prepare you for the upcoming sections involving the Seraphites and the WLF fighting each other. But that runner is dead, and here is the stationary clicker. So when you see it moving, stop moving. I highly recommend having awareness markers on just to indicate when you should actually stop, because it helps in knowing when the enemy is about to detect you. Like, there's some really useful accessibility options on this game, and I'll definitely detail them when I get the chance. But once we've gotten through this door over here, this will practically conclude Seattle Day 1 for Abby section. I mean, there is an additional section involving the aquarium, but there's no threat whatsoever. So this is the end of Seattle Day 1 for Abby section. Stay tuned for the future chapters. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.